It is wonderful to be here in Helsinki. So I will be talking about product-first companies, and to do so, I will describe a little bit of my own experience in software. The only constant, so I've been working in the software field, I guess I enrolled in university in '99, and the only thing that's changed, the only thing that's been constant has been change. Literally, every time you think you know something, it goes away and you're dumb all over again. And that happens in software, for those of you who work in it, like every, I guess, 2 to 3 years, there's a whole new wave of shit you have to learn to sound smart so you can come on stages like this. So, to go back, the software industry actually really is credited as starting in 1969. IBM kicked the whole thing off. The first thing that happened in 1969 was we had the first patent ever issued for software, and my favorite bit is the full implications are not yet known. I would argue they're still not yet known, to be honest. And that was undeniably the biggest credited as the biggest change that happened. In '69, IBM decided that software and hardware were different things. And as a result, they split their software division up. And they created this new thing called the programs division. And that became known as the biggest software event of '69, and also arguably the first ever. In '76, Bill Gates wrote this famous letter called a message or a letter to hobbyists. And in it, he made a very simple request. Could we please pay for the software we use? And in doing so, it was an impassioned plea, because up until then, people used to just copy shit off each other, never pay for it, and they somehow thought the software itself wasn't valuable. And Bill Gates thought differently. And now he has a few euro spare because of that. So, for the longest time, and certainly when I was growing up, this was how we experienced software. It came with these 3.5-inch floppy disks that we all know and loved once upon a time. And we basically did actually indeed go and copy it. Those of us who were really ethical would actually pay for it, but the rest of us just copied it from person to person. And business software at the time was horribly different. Business software is pitched as being this, sort of phenomenal solution, but when you actually paid for it, it looked like this shit, right? It was, you bought this box and put it in your server room and plugged it in and hoped to God it worked. And sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. And the way software was actually sold then had a lot to do with why it was so bad. Software was sold through the org chart. You had to go in to the organization chart and work out who is the person I can sell to, who is most gullible, who's got most money, who is the easiest person to target here that will definitely would not even do any due diligence and just buy my shit. And the answer, of course, is the CEO. So your super sales team come in. They've got the hair gel and the stripy suits and the fancy shoes. And what does the CEO have? Well, the CEO has money. The sales team say, hey, I propose a swap. And then they get the hell out of there before anyone realizes the software is shit. And then what you end up with is the CEO's got software, but you have this problem where the buyer doesn't use it, because the buyer is all the way down the end. The buyer's not using it, and the user's not buying it. So what happens? The software is shit. It's as simple as that. So to recap, just to think about a quick history of software, in '69, IBM bundles. '76, Bill Gates explains that maybe this stuff is worth money. In '89, we kicked off the World Wide Web. And then in '99, a curious thing happened. A group of ex-Oracle people got together and launched this, the Salesforce. And this is literally where everything got strange. As you can see, this is an early day of software, because they talk about things like exploiting the power of the information highway. Because that's the sort of shit you said when you didn't know how to explain the internet, right? You had to lean on anything you had. So they actually updated their marketing site. My favorite one is this. The account sign-up bonus is you'll get a complimentary Zig Ziglar tape if you sign up before June. The fact that they're giving away cassettes to people who are signing up for software is hilarious to me. But that is basically the world we were in. The only thing that changed here was absolutely everything. Literally, software as a service, the idea you could buy software online through a web browser, changed everything. It changed how you build for software, how you price it, how you develop it, how you distribute it, the entire business model, the role of user experience, customer support, shipping, you name it. Every single thing is different because we can sell it online, and it can be consumed online. And we don't need to send people out with PowerPoint slides and stripy suits to pitch a CEO. Everything's different. The first big change was that the old box, the first sort of wave of software here was the old box that you used to lock in your server room was now pitched as being in the cloud. And this, unfortunately, didn't actually improve things dramatically other than the adoption. Everything was just explained as, it's now in the cloud. And we didn't really know what that meant. So the way it was pitched was, Salesforce's slogan at the time was like, no software. But you'd say it works from anywhere. You can access your files on the road, or you can sign up online. Back when the word online meant something. Unfortunately, when you actually got there, it was still the same old stuff. It wasn't particularly nice software. It was still pretty junky, but it was easier to sign up for sure. The next sort of wave, and as was said earlier, like my career kind of started in user experience design. The next wave was, maybe we should design this being somewhat compassionate to the fact that humans are employed to use it. And that became known as the era of user experience. So what this meant is like, what this meant was when Steve Jobs gets up there and says like, we're going to give you a phone that actually is not shit. And that just changed the world, because now what happened is people were now used to the idea that software could be aesthetically attractive. When you press buttons with labels on them, the software will do what the label said. All of these new concepts were sort of heralded with the iPhone. And we start to see software that now looks beautiful. The standard of specifically aesthetics in software these days is phenomenal. Some areas they've really gone over the top, but to even break in with a nicely designed product, the table stakes are huge now. To even just get on the page of being nicely designed is a hard piece of work. And some areas, like say project management, this is where they spend all the innovation here is just being like, how much more beautiful can we make software? Not realizing that maybe sometimes beauty isn't the problem, but it's an obsession for some industries. The third change, and a really interesting one, was when we started to tackle real business problems with software. So you bake distribution into the product. So after 2007, after 2008, we had this era where the whole world was connected, and the average person has hundreds of friends, and many of us have thousands of Twitter followers. The entire internet is connected of people. So if you sell somebody and they really like what you're selling them, they will tell their friends, and that gets you what Gary Vaynerchuk used to call word of mouth on steroids. So simply getting one person to be passionate about your product, if they even tell 1.01 other people, it's game over, you're a billionaire. It's literally like that. That is the power of distribution when you can get it inside the software. So what we learned through these shifts is that just by focusing on great product, you can actually solve so many business problems. You can solve retention, customers stick around, engagement, they use it more, traction, marketing, conversion. All of these things can be solved by building phenomenal product. To give you two simple examples from my own life, Intercom, for its first few years, here's our traffic. During this period, we did not have a single person on staff who was a marketer, nor did we have a single person on staff who was a salesperson. We just worked on product. Slack are an even more extreme example. Slack's daily active users before they got into marketing went from 14,000 people in February 2014 to 3 million daily active people in the space of 2 years and 2 months or something like that. Again, this is what happens when you focus on a phenomenal product first and then think about other stuff later on. And most of the problems you run into, you try to solve with product. You get thousands of paying customers these days on a $0 marketing budget, and that is possible when you focus on product. This is why you see things like Dropbox, again, $10 billion company, epic growth, but it's why they bake in referral programs. Uber, God knows how much they're worth at this point, but again, they bake distribution in. So even us with Intercom, whenever you see Intercom, you're going to see it's powered by Intercom because we know the value. So we have had these different types of companies throughout the years. The sales-first company would be you sign a sales deal, and then you run off and tell engineering, hey, you won't believe what we just did. So that'd be like, you go to some company and you say, hey, what do you need? And they'll say, oh, well, we need enterprise-grade midware to configure the flibbles with the flabbles. And you're like, how much will you pay? $2 million. We can do that. Hey, guys, we need enterprise-grade midware to configure the flibble with the flabble. And like, that's basically how sales companies work, right? Sales-driven companies work. Marketing first is you work out what's the most impressive thing you can say, and then cross your fingers and hope that it can be built. So that is like, are you ready for enterprise-grade flibble-flabble configuration? And you also have technology first, which is like, hey, boss, I've worked out a way to configure the flibbles with the flabbles. Do you think people will buy it? But like, these are all different ways you can approach building a company. What we're seeing is this era, when you look at the modern sort of the shining stars of Silicon Valley, we're seeing this era of product-first companies. That is, companies that tackle a real problem with a phenomenal product. And it's not just that, that they do product first. Lots of businesses have built their product first, but it's that they try to solve every problem they encounter with product first. It's not just what you do first, it's the lens through which you see all of your business problems. And there's been 3 mega trends that have enabled companies to hit these 5, 10, 20, 50, $80 billion valuations. 3 mega trends have supported this. The first of them is that the market is growing phenomenally fast. The market for software is just gone crazy. To give you a simple example of this, going back to '99, say, here was how you consumed the news, music, movies. Here's how you hung out with your friends. You did all of these things using what we today call single-purpose devices, like a newspaper. Today, it all looks like this, basically, or like this. But it's certainly, the idea of all these different expressive mediums converging onto a single piece of glass wasn't obvious to us, but it is what happened. The main point being like that, if this is a sort of rough, total addressable market, you've got big companies and lots of small companies, what's actually happening is it's just blowing up. It's like there's more companies at every size and every scale, and they're all looking to buy software. What we're seeing is the adoption of software. Here's the death knell of on-premise software. It is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And meanwhile, the idea that people can adopt software as a service is growing and growing. This tells us 2 things. It takes longer than you think, and there's a lot left to happen. But this is genuinely what's happening in the industry. Even niche markets, the market is so big that even niche markets can hit $10 million in annual recurring revenue. You could literally sell dentistry software to dentists named Dennis in Denmark, and you can still hit 10 million. That's how big the demand for software is. To give you a macro example, let's look at again, using a 10-year increment. September 2006, the top 10 most valuable companies in the world, 1 software company. Today, it's gotten a little bit different. 5 of the top 5, 6 of the top 10, all software companies. This is what we're living in right now. So the second big shift here is that the go-to-market has totally changed. The way in which you get your product out there has totally changed. We don't do this anymore. We don't have to put salespeople on planes with PowerPoint decks and hair gel and steak dinners to try and sell stuff. That's not what we do. What we do is we sell to the end user. You sell to me. If I like it, I'll tell my team. And if they like it, it'll spread around the org. And that is how you get these insane adoption numbers. We've moved from this era of buy before you try, where it's all about the conversion and it's smoke and mirrors and whatever it takes to get the check written. We've moved from this to an era of letting people try before they buy. And what that means is they can adopt, they can sign up, they can experiment, they can see if they like it, they can add their teammates, they can do all this thing before they even have to talk to you. So we've moved from this era where people had to you had to have as many salespeople as you could have concurrent sales relationships forming. That doesn't happen anymore. As I'm sitting here on stage, hundreds of people are signing up for Intercom, and that's just crazy because I'm not here doing anything about it. I'm on stage, It's wonderful. But everything has changed because of this. What's new about it now is that companies today can be started for near zero, and they can be distributed to an ever-expanding market of people who will not just adopt and pay for, but actually evangelize your product. And the third big change, and Scott spoke about this earlier, was this shift to recurring revenue. People want this stuff like it's cocaine. Anyone who makes money wants to make money on a recurring basis now. So in the old days, Adobe wanted you to buy Photoshop for $900 or $895 if they were feeling generous. And that was a one-time sale up front, and if you bought it, they were like cha-ching, and if you didn't buy it, they were like boo. But once you bought it, they didn't give a shit what happened. They're like, we've got our $900, peace. Today, they'll sell it to you at $20 a month, which means, for those of you who like your mathematics, they need 45 months worth of usage out of you. They need you to stick around for 45 months. What does that mean? That means the product has to be good. It means it has to be engaging. And it means, most importantly, it has to actually do what the hell they sold it to you to do. And then you'll consistently pay. But it means a lot more people can afford it at $20 a month too. And that change is phenomenal because the other shift here is that the true value of a user, of a customer, is much more than what they're paying you. Customers are worth much more than what they're paying for you, because for every $20 person who signs up, they might tell their colleague or their team or their boss or their friends, and you get more of these $20. And it's predictable revenue. You know it's coming. You can bank on it every month. So that's the sort of the context of product-first companies. What I'll talk about briefly is how you can actually create them. There's a few kind of key ingredients, especially if you're looking to pivot towards this model. There's a few key ingredients. First is that the product you build has to be core to your company's success. So you can't be just motivated by being number one in pharma or number two or the best marketing automation. You have to think, what change do I want in the world, and how can my company be core to that? How can my product make that change happen? So every company kind of sits on this pyramid, if you like. At the base level, you have this vision. What is it you're trying to do? And then it flows all the way up to your activities. What are you doing day to day? And you get progressively less abstract along the way, and you get progressively more descriptive and more sort of pragmatic along the way as well. And your mission and vision have to be aligned around your product's impact in this world. So like Freddie Mercury once said, you have one vision, but you can have many activities. You can have an abstract vision. It doesn't need to speak in terms of being an app or being a service. It just needs to be a vision for what you want to do. But you need to be specific when you talk about your day-to-day. And when we talk about day-to-day, it can be kind of blurry, but like your day-to-day ideally will map towards whatever your vision is. At Intercom, our mission is to make internet business personal. Stripe want to increase the GDP of the internet. Instacart want to be the best way for people anywhere to shop for groceries. Uber want to make transportation as reliable as running water. But all of these things can be joined perfectly back to what their actual product does when you use it. You're not scratching your head using Uber thinking, what is this doing? You realize they actually will, if they succeed, create transportation that is reliable. The second thing is, because in this era, you have to always have a brand that is, most importantly, a great product. And this is why we see this uptick in R&D investment, because that is actually what the core is. It's about phenomenal product, which comes from phenomenal R&D. You have to be feasible, desirable, and viable. And no two of these are sufficient. If you're viable and feasible, no one wants it. If you're viable and desirable, it might not be possible. And lastly, and probably most importantly, where technologies companies fall over, is that you can be feasible in that it's possible, and everyone might want it, but if it doesn't make any money, you're going to struggle at some point. And we see this happen time and time again in the markets when people go, well, what is Yahoo really worth these days? It's like, if you don't have ways of making money, you will always struggle. The other piece I like to think about in this regard is, so I'm actually getting married next Friday, and which I didn't know when I accepted this conference invitation. Thank you. But one of the many things you do to prepare for marriage is you pick a wedding cake. And a wedding cake can be, you can be sold a wedding cake two different ways. Someone can be like, here, taste that. That's some cake base. And I'm like, that's pretty bland. And they're like, now try some filling. And now try some icing. What do you think? And I think, this tastes horrendous. Because at no point have I actually sampled anything that tastes like the final product, right? And in addition to that, I don't know how big it is, I don't know what's going to work, I don't know if the flavors work, I can't tell if chocolate and carrot is a good flavor, or should I go with caramel and vanilla? I have no idea. Another way you could sell me a wedding cake, and this is the people I bought from, is you can say, here, try this cupcake. What do you think of those flavors? And I will learn, and I'll be like, yeah, I could see that working. And then they can be like, all right, well now let's try with a real cake. And then we can scale up to a wedding cake. This is how you build a great product. You start with something that's simple, desirable, and viable, a cupcake. At that point, you'll learn if your oven works. You'll learn if you know how to bake. You'll learn all these fundamental things. And then you step it up. The worst thing you can do is what's on the top there. Spend millions of dollars in R&D and cross your fingers and hope to God the cake works out at the end. Bad idea. The third thing is you have to be ruthless when you're focusing your product work. So One thing that people don't get is how small software teams are compared to the value they create. WhatsApp was 30 engineers, and they are bigger than the entire global SMS network. To put that in perspective, that's like the first 3 rows here got together and built something that took down SMS. That's how big. So when you have a small team making a massive impact, you really have to steer that team carefully because you can control your future with it. The way I always explain this to people is, hey, in your product or in your business or goods or services, you have things that your customers do all of the time and some of the time. And you have things that all of your customers do and things that only some of your customers do. So if you're a simple project management tool or something like that, you might see something like this. You should be able to sort of say, here's roughly what people do in my product. Now, to focus, you need to realize that there is some really important stuff in your product that needs to be good. And there is some really unimportant shit that just doesn't matter. And in the top left, the yellow section, what you have is the danger zone. This is when you end up building a product for a very small amount of people, but you're only charging $20 a month for it. You're effectively a consultancy that does not know how to charge for your product. That's dangerous. The other thing I say to people a lot is, be careful you don't end up snacking. And the way to think about snacking is most of your product, most of your company work should be considered high impact and high effort. It's probably hard to do, but it really matters when you do it well. Then you have another section, which is, this is the quick wins. This is stuff that, there's rarely a lot here, but it's low-hanging fruit. It's like, if we can get this right, it'd be great. We also have stuff that's high effort and low impact. So it's a lot of work that doesn't really do a lot. And typically engineering rewrites and stuff like this fall into this category. A lot of work, but no one really feels any benefit. But the danger here is the bottom left. It's the shit you do that's low impact but low effort. And you use the fact that it's low impact to excuse the fact that it's low effort, and vice versa. You'll say, that didn't really do much. Yeah, but it took us very little time to do. Or like, hey, we only spent a week on that. Yeah, but it didn't really work out. And it's the death knell. It's what you do when you have no strategy, is you draw like a fly, like a moth to a flame to this lower corner, where you just spend all the time, I'm going to run the Twitter for the day, and I'll post some tweets. It's like, yeah, but you're not growing your company doing that. You're just doing stuff that's low impact, low effort. Another crucial thing to do is to realize that you can only charge for the value you create. You should never create value you can't charge for, and you should always charge for the value you create. A lot of people come to me with businesses that they think, with products that they think will turn into good businesses. But just because you have a great product, you don't automatically get a great business. One way to describe this I use a lot is to say, there are big problems and there are small problems that people have in their lives. And there are problems people have a lot and problems people have rarely. Do not solve small problems that people rarely have. It is a waste of time. If it was a big problem, you could charge them money for it. If they had it all the time, you could extract revenue through advertising or sponsorship. But if it's a rare, small problem, you are bust. A corollary to this is don't build complicated but cheap software. If you're not charging for complexity, you're going to go bankrupt. Your cost of goods and services, COGS, will eat you alive. If you need to be involved in every deal, you will never be able to tap into this revenue, this money train that's coming. You will just not get it. If you are moving to recurring revenue, throw away all of your company instruments because you need a new set. The best way I could describe this is, I do a little bit of investing in other companies from time to time, and people will come to me and say, hey, check out my revenue growth. And I'm like, yeah, it looks great. Doesn't it $6 million in 18 months? That's phenomenal. I like it. But show me the other side. How are people sticking around? Churn is literally the make or break factor for a product-first company. You can't live if you're churning badly because it means your product isn't good enough. The whole point of a product-first company is that your product is so good people stick around. A simple way to measure this is what Mamoon Hamid, who's one of our investors, calls the quick ratio. Look at your new monthly recurring revenue and your expansion and divide it by the cancelled and the contraction. That will answer the question, can you reliably grow revenue? Because on a long enough time frame, all growth will decay, but churn will never go away. And that's a really, really important thing to realize. Product-first companies should worry about churn way more than growth. Your bet is that people love your product. Prove it. And lastly, you have to be patient for this growth. So Intercom's now in the tens of millions of annual recurring revenue, which is awesome. But it didn't always look perfect, because unlike, say, dumping $50 million through the ad networks, in direct response, you tend to see that money back pretty quick. When you dump $50 million into R&D to build software, you have to be a lot more patient for that to pay back, but when it comes back, it sticks around for a long time. It's okay if it takes time. So the ingredients for me are: have a strong vision, have a feasible, desirable, and viable product, focus your product team and your product work, capture the value you create, measure your business properly, and be patient. It will take longer, but it's the right way to go. I hope you found that useful. I'm Traynor from Intercom. Thank you very much.